Hi, I'm Jennifer Poole,
And I'm Dave Poole.
and this is our 20 days.
Well, actually, today I wanted to pick up on one of your most recent written blogs. And for those of you that we've not pointed out to, Paul writes a more or less daily blog called Polishing, PAULISHING.com. And for some reason, I've made this connection in my head between people that have technology backgrounds with cooking. And while the specific post, I guess, I don't know if you call it cooking or not. I don't know if you actually heated anything in the pico de gallo. Just a mixture of fresh vegetables and lime juice and a few other things. But so I guess the connection between technology and cooking in general is probably problem solving. Do you think? I mean, is that the most obvious connection?
Yeah, I think technologists like to assemble things,
Yeah,
whether it's grabbing a jQuery library or whatever pieces, and there's so many available on the internet, which is kind of funny because when I started out, my career, it was like mainframes and it was all closed source and all this stuff, and never imagined that I'd be able to actually take that to retirement and be able to continue to play with all the free stuff that's out there. But yeah, and somewhat of a generational thing. We run into so many people that just don't cook. I mean, you see DoorDash, people getting lunch by DoorDash and things like that. My wife and I are just like, what? And why don't people cook? I don't know why. So, but both of us do like to do that. We watch a lot of the Food Network shows that the kitchen and Drives Grocery Games and a few other ones. And we just like to try new recipes.
yeah,
And this was really something that I kicked off when Elaine and I got married. And the story goes, she goes, well, what if we try one of these recipes and it's no good? And what happens if we don't like it? And I go, well, we'll throw it in the trash and we'll go up to Elsa's.
and not make it again.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to make this as riskless as for you as possible.
Yeah,
And she went, well, okay, that seems to work. And there are times and the reason I did that was I did that quite often in my work life where, I was managing people and they were just they're just so adverse to risk that, they would just freak out. They were so worried about being wrong, even if it was for something that cost $100, they just didn't want to be wrong. So I repeatedly took the risk at work because I knew A, it wasn't all that important, and B, I just don't mind. I don't mind if we fail once in a while. That's fine. It's
right.
learn from that. So that kind of kicked off. Excuse me. I had a heck of a time this morning. That kind of kicked off our desire to just try different recipes and try a little this and try a little that and there's fun stories that come out of this. One recipe wasn't something I made. We were a couple of years ago down in Clearwater Beach having dinner, and the waitress asked me for a side dish, and I hadn't really thought about what side I wanted with my fish sandwich. So I quickly picked up the menu. I looked at the 6 sides that were there and decided I'd just pick the one that was the worst. The one I probably wouldn't like at all. And which was coconut rice. And I don't particularly care for coconut, except in a pina colada. So I got the coconut rice and I decided, well, I'll at least try it, see
Right.
what it's like. And it was delicious. And we've made coconut rice several times since then. In fact, when we were down in Florida a month ago, we made it at her aunt's house, and there wasn't a drop left at the end of the dinner. So
Yeah,
this idea that you could take these risks, and they're really not that big a risk, and
no,
just try things. Another recipe was, and sometimes we look at a recipe and it's like, oh, how could that work? So you have one like we make cod with marinara and fennel. Just
Okay.
doesn't, just doesn't.
Yeah,
We looked at
it
it and
doesn't leap off the page at me. Yeah, I get it.
yeah, it's like, well, we just let's just try this because it's just so goofy, and I don't like licorice, so I figured that would the fennel kind of tastes like licorice at
Right.
least before it's cooked.
Yeah.
Although fennel is a much nicer, it's not the sweet kind of licorice and all that. And when we tried feta with a cod, I'm sorry, cod with marinara and fennel, and it was delicious. And it's just sometimes you just like to play around and experiment with things, and you find new best friends.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, at least the thing I've learned is there are certain elements in your choices to go into a recipe that are just a blank palette. They are a carrier for everything else. And like you just mentioned, the cod. Cod in and of itself is not a overly flavorful fish. It's your generic white fish. It's got a certain texture. It takes 6 minutes to cook. It doesn't it's not hard to it's hard to screw up the cod itself. But what else do you put with it? Like you said, marinara probably wouldn't have been something that would have been in my first 10 things I selected. But that's an interesting combination. I don't experiment enough with fish. I do a lot with shrimp.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried a couple things with scallops. But scallops is I don't know if you've done much with those, but there's like about a 30-second window in which scallops are cooked properly. If you undercook it, they're a pile of goo. If you overcook it, they're a small hockey puck. And there's not much in between there. So I haven't done too much with that. And to your point about kind of the fear of screwing up and, okay, what are we going to have for dinner now? I always keep a 4-pack of Costco Kirkland branded frozen pizzas in my freezer, just in case the world goes upside down and whatever tonight's experiment went askew.
Yeah, we recently tried the Kirkland pizza. It's not a not a regular crust, but it's a
Like
cauliflower
cauliflower or
crust?
something.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. And generally,
Yeah.
we'll just take it and then maybe we'll throw a little extra. Like we've had some sliced chorizo, we throw that on there, maybe a little
Yep.
bit extra cheese and stuff like that. Yeah, it's nice when you have what do we hadn't really thought about tonight or whatever. That's a good way of mitigating that risk. Also,
Yeah, 15 minutes later you've got a meal, so that's not so bad. The thing when I moved down south, as it were, 20 some odd years ago, I had never up until very recently tried to actually make my own shrimp and grits, and that's one of those recipes that I'm not great at following a written recipe. So I use written recipes as thought starters. So okay, what did they put in their recipe? And one of my rules of thumb, if there's more than 5 or 6 ingredients in the recipe, it's probably more than I want to think about. I value simplicity. But I made, oh gosh, it's probably been a couple of years ago, my first shrimp and grits, and it was one of those. Okay, you start with a decent brand of grits. You buy fresh local shrimp during season, and then it's some people use barbecue sauce, some people use a tomato based, some people use a pepper gravy base sauce. So I ended up doing more of a pepper gravy type of thing, and just a little bit of bacon, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, some green peppers, and it was one of those. When I finished, it was like, this is really, if I may say so myself, quite decent. And then Jennifer asked the $100,000 question. So can you do it again? I said, not exactly like this, because they didn't write anything down. I have no idea what I just did. So next time it'll be a little different. It has to be.
Well, we don't do scallops that much. Elaine really doesn't like. They tend to have a little bit of graininess, a little sand in them,
Right.
unless you get
Yes.
really good ones, and she doesn't like that bite into sand. I don't either. But shrimp's a lot better from that standpoint. The one recipe we make most often with shrimp is a sheet pan, which has so you get your rice cooked up, spread the rice on the bottom of the sheet pan. You put shrimp, you cut up some green pepper, pineapple, which you would think, well, that's kind of weird. And there's something else in there. It's another one of those that we just kind of looked at and went, well, that's weird. We got to try that because it'd be interesting to see how that pineapple works with the shrimp, et cetera. It's really good. So yeah, I actually have a Google document where I have our menu sort of. If we were ever going to open a restaurant and we wanted to put our recipe, our favorite recipes on there, so I have appetizers and main meals and even a few desserts, even though we're not terribly big at desserts.
So I don't know if you remember. I think you remember Quint Pikney, and I don't know if Tom Roberts also worked with me at Research. We had a band for a while, still do talk a little bit about it, but we haven't done much recently. But once upon a time, we all got together at Tom's house in Upper Arlington in Ohio, and we were trying to figure out why chocolate chips hold their shape in the oven. And, this is one of the great mysteries of life. And, we probably spent 2 hours making different batches of chocolate chips, chocolate chip cookies, chocolate chip cake, and trying to figure out, all right, what's the deal here? And literally 20 minutes before I got on here with you, I was Googling something else about a chocolate chip cookie recipe and wasn't thinking about this episode at all. But I came across 2 or 3 articles that finally, I think, have cracked the code on why the chocolate chips hold their shape. So apparently chocolate chips have a lot more cocoa butter in them than your standard issue chocolate bar or other confectionery types of things. And apparently cocoa butter has a much higher melting point. So at 350 degrees or whatever temperature you're baking your cookies at, you don't get the cocoa butter to relax enough. And the cocoa butter is what's providing the shape to the cookies. So I'm trying to think when we probably did this. This was probably like 2005, maybe, when we had this grand experiment. So we've now apparently solved a nearly 20-year-old mystery. So I feel better now.
Well, it just so happens I made a batch of chocolate chip cookies this last weekend.
Okay.
We had people coming into town for a couple of days, and I thought, it'd be nice to have something that they can munch on. So, and I remember that I baked them at 325, which I thought was interesting. It was a little lower than I would have expected.
Right.
But when I make the chocolate chip cookies, I just roll them into balls, and so all the chocolate chips are inside. So I never thought about maybe next time I'll get one maybe a little flatter and stick one on top of it and not inside the batter, and then maybe crank the oven up and see how far I can go before it melts.
Right.
But
that's a good idea.
There's something very it's wonderful when you have a house, it's a cold day, and you've got the smell of chocolate chip cookies wafting through the house.
Well, I mean, isn't that the old story about open houses for homes that are for sale? Is you go in and you bake a batch of cookies in the home, so the house reeks of this, very homey, earthy smell of chocolate chip cookies. So, and smell is one of those, powerful motivators. I know just in our Molly Maid business, we tell our teams, make sure you leave something behind that leaves a clean aroma. And I guess clean smells different to different people, right? Some people, it needs to be bleach. Bleach means clean. And it's like, okay, I don't need to smell bleach all day. Then others, it's, it's a nice air freshener or something along those lines. But that, the power of smell is maybe one of the most impactful of the senses in terms of memory. So at least so I've been told. I can't say that I have personal experience saying that, where like I smell something and it's like, ooh, I remember something from kindergarten because of this. It's never come up.
I found that, and this is just something I caught myself doing years ago, and I really kind of had to explore it. And am I really doing this? But when I go into a room or I meet somebody for the first time, I find myself smelling first. And I don't know if that's a, sort of we descended from
Yes.
apes thing kind of,
Right.
or whether it's actually, well, if you walk into a room and before you get in there, you really can't see much of the room, but so smell is something that actually
Mm-hmm.
hit you first. But yeah, I find it, I'll meet somebody and it just just unconsciously, if I pay attention to it, I realize I've just taken a little sniff and, just I
That's got it.
even don't know why I do it really, but I've just catch myself doing it. I don't know. Kind of
Yeah,
weird.
what the heck? Well, I'm going to cut us a little short today. I've got a call here in about 10 minutes and I need to do a little bit of prep work for it. So
Sure.
good seeing you, buddy, and have a good trip to Pittsburgh.
All righty. I'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for joining us here at Our 20 Days. We appreciate the time that you invest in our videos and audio podcasts. If you'd like to go to our20days.com, you can join as a member and you'll be notified every week of new content. And we'd sincerely appreciate that. Thanks and have a great day.